We would like to thank everybody for coming today to our panel discussion on the DAO and the future of the DAO. Just to let everybody quickly know, Bitcoin Bay has been around, first starting as a community engagement since 2014, and as a company since 2017. Our mandate is to grow the blockchain ecosystem one person at a time globally, and part of it is through the meetups, hackathons, and everything else we do as well. We also have a business side, so you can go to bitcoinbay.ca and you can see what we do there. But I would like to thank firstly on behalf of Bitcoin Bay, our moderator Victor, and our panelists for joining us today and actually discussing and trying to shed light on what the DAO is. And we all hear about the DAO, metaverse, NFTs, topics that come into the blockchain and crypto space. And again, our purpose, part of our mandate purpose is to educate the community. So again, I hand this off to Victor. Victor, it's all yours.
I'm really excited to have this opportunity to assemble three experts in this area when talk about one of the hottest topic in the crypto space. If I look back for the last few years, I would say, 2020 is the year of DeFi. 2021, you could say is a year of NFT. I hope that 2022, this year, we could call it the lot of excitement, a lot of development in this space. Today, I just check out one of the website about tracking the DAO movement in this space. Did you know there's over 4,000 DAO out there? And you add up all the treasury in the DAO, they have $8 billion worth of token, the asset under their management, under their control. So of course, as many of you probably remember, was the story behind the first DAO. In 2016, the first DAO was born out of Ethereum community, and it was raised over $100 million worth of Ether. But we all know what happened. Somebody very smart find a loophole in the code and ready to drain all the token out for their own benefit. And within a few weeks, the Ethereum community get together and decide that we're going to do a half fork. The reason why was that decision was made because the DAO represent roughly about 10% of the Ether in circulation. So imagine that an attacker was in control of 10% of the asset of the community, which can be quite vulnerable. So that's the reason we have a half fork. So that's it. After that, the DAO literally died. There's nobody want to talk about DAO for quite a few years, but we're glad to see that over the last couple of years, the concept of DAO was reborn, and the community is getting really active. There's a new tool has been developed to help the community to organize, govern the DAO. So today we just want to deep dive into this area with our expert speaker, Elena, Daniel, Ramin. We have a list of questions and we can chat about. But before we dive into those questions, I would like to ask our panelists to just give a brief introduction for themselves. I know some of you probably know them very well. Maybe perhaps Daniel was from Europe or probably don't know him well. So maybe we let Daniel start first. Would you like to introduce yourself first, Daniel?
Sure. Thank you, Victor, and thanks for having me. So I call myself an organization design facilitator. I spend the best part of the last decade thinking about how people can work together in different ways. Most recently, I was head of governance for Aragon, one of the main platforms for DAO creation. And now, on top of advising different projects, I'm also co-founding DAO, which is research and development or innovation center to facilitate the mainstream adoption of DAOs.
It's great, thank you. And I know you speak quite a bit about DAO on YouTube, on other events, so really happy to have you, and appreciate that given the time zone difference, you are able to join us, stay late to join us. Okay, now we move on to next to Ramin. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi everyone, I'm Ramin. Really good to be with you today. I'm calling out of Toronto. I'm currently an entrepreneur building something new. Before that, I was recently a fintech venture capitalist. So looking at the intersection of how fintech and crypto can create really valuable opportunities, which is burgeoning right now. I've been a lawyer in the past. I worked out of New York. I've been an investor for the Sharks Off Shark Tank, and I've been an entrepreneur. So love the entrepreneurial community and seeing a lot of great stuff happen in the DAO space.
Awesome. Thank you, Ramin. I know your legal background, and also you was part of, in the VC space. So, talking about DAO really will benefit from your expertise in those areas. Okay. The last but not the final but not last one, Elena. We probably know Elena. Everyone in Toronto know Elena because the Crypto Chick. And I remember a few years ago, I took my daughter to attend the Crypto Chick conference, and she had a good time to play a little a game that some of you developed, and was great. So, Elena, would you like to just introduce yourself to the people who don't know you?
Yes, thank you, Victor. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I am, yes, as Victor said, I'm a founder of Crypto Chicks. That's a nonprofit organization for women's education. And now I'm also a co-founder and CEO of Meetup, which is the Web3 economy for decentralized autonomous companies. It's kind of like DAO, advanced DAOs, let's say that, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit more. But as well for that, we built the whole layer 2 solution in order for us to be, scalable and actually to provide the operations for these decentralized autonomous companies on the blockchain. So, thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, Elena, since that Mendes is a platform for building DAO and also non-DAO, maybe start with you. What exactly is DAO? Like, what's for? Why do we need DAO?
DAO. So there are lots of definitions, and actually we can refer to anyone. So someone said that DAO, for example, it's the internet community with a shared cap table and a bank account. So, for example, it's that a definition, right? So so DAO is the organization where people get together and they make decisions together as well, based on their contribution. So that's kind of like basic definitions and the way that we know it. But of course, because we're talking of the future, and so we're here to kind of highlight problems that DAOs have. And so DAOs can be actually, many things, whatever you imagine them to be. So how I imagine, and in my world and in the future world, so DAO is actually the
Sorry.
that as down.
Sorry, Elena, for a few seconds, your image was frozen. Would you mind to repeat the last few seconds, what you just said?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
So
yeah.
I said that DAO in my world, and of course, the in the world as DAC, decentralized autonomous company, is the entity which allow us to do business, and no one can shut this business down. So that's what decentralization in the DAO means for me.
Okay, great, thank you. And Daniel, since you are, very knowledgeable in this space, like, what kind of DAO out there, like what DAO you've seen has done really well, and what DAO has tried but didn't work very well? Like, what's your observation in this space?
Sure, thank you. I mean, it's a long list, and it's hard to select a single champion. Some DAOs that I particularly appreciate can be IndexCop, Bankless, to some degree. Gnosis, even though their process of DAOifying is a little bit more recent and so on, but generally the pattern that I see when a DAO starts to become really successful is when it has enabled enough its community, its people, that the different organizational functions, and it can be the marketing team or the data analytics team or the HR team or whatever of the teams it has, it starts to almost becomes its own DAO. It starts to transform into its own company that is selling products or services to other people, and can expand that beyond the DAO. And it becomes more of this network of organizations. And there is now a list of DAOs that have matured to this space. But equally on the other side, the other pattern that we see, the common failure is DAOs that grow extremely quickly, that can acquire a huge market cap, but that have actually built very little cohesion, very little social tissue, very little processes, very little systems, and they implode equally quick. And to some degree here we have, well, there has been the whole drama around Sushi. Aragon itself has suffered from issues around conflict management, where wave after wave of people have left. Essentially, the team have left en masse. And like that, there is many different other organizations that have suffered fundamentally from the same thing. Usually DAOs fail either because they get hacked, which happens sometimes, or because actually the people get into an argument and they cannot agree and they don't know how to resolve it, and the organization implodes or end up getting divided.
Yeah, that's great. Interesting. Today, I just saw a news that one of the DAO, which I don't want to name the name, that a person vote himself to the majority and took all the money. I think it's over $100 million or something like that. So there's definitely some loophole in the governance. How could you design in such a way that prevent one malicious hacker come in, just drain the asset because he controlled the majority and take it out? So Ramin, given your legal background, how would you say to this kind of situation in terms of governance? How can we prevent one selfish person that come in to just drain the money for their own benefit?
I think this is a really good question. And the area of law surrounding DAOs is very much not developed. There are very few answers to questions in this space. And we have to really go back to base principles. When you look at what can you do about someone being malicious around a DAO, you'd use regular everyday laws to try and track that person down and see if what they did was bad and what to do as a result. And that is troubling in the world of DAOs and decentralization, where it really is difficult to say which country has jurisdiction over these actions. What do we do with anonymous participants? How can the legal system really react to this new world is something that the regulators and the legislators are still grappling with. I think some of the very most early change we're seeing in the legal world is the actual acknowledgement that DAOs exist and that DAOs are a new way for people to organize. And we've seen just a couple of jurisdictions worldwide actually start to recognize DAOs. One of the most recent of which is the state of Wyoming, which about mid last year recognized that DAOs are a way for groups of people to organize themselves, and they will look very similar to what we know and love as a limited liability company. So the world is still very new and developing as it relates to how the law applies to DAOs.
Thank you, Ramin. What if a DAO, the founder, should they should they allow to be anonymous? Would you participate in a DAO that's the founder, the people who there are anonymous? Would you feel comfortable?
I think for me, it would depend on what I'm using that DAO for. If I was using the DAO for my banking, maybe I would want the DAO to have very rock solid governance and I could know who that person was. But if the DAO is doing something else, maybe it's a DAO to find collectibles, or maybe it's a DAO to perform fundraising. Maybe I'm a little more okay with the DAO being governed in any way, so long as it's achieving its mission. I think that's the beauty of the DAO, is it gives a lot more flexibility in how it's operated.
Okay. Okay, let's back to Elena. On your platform, Mentis, how do you deal with identity? This aspect, like what's the tool that you provide the DAO founder of the DAO to manage it? Do you have decentralized identity, centralized identity? How do you do it?
Yes, so thank you, Victor. And this is also related to probably your previous question as well, and how we deal with that problem. And this is, again, this is all, we're still in the research. We still have a research center that is right now, we do the research and development of the platform, of the infrastructure. So my opinion, my personal opinion, it's kind of redundant to go back to the law enforcement, to the centralized entities while we're developing the decentralized world, right? So we say like, oh guys, we kind of failed because we built this amazing decentralized system, but now we need your help again because we kind of miserably failed in that, and yeah, help us. So that's why we're doing research on what actually can we do on the platform level? How can we hardwire those rules into the platform that will actually put the safeguards around the process and around the operations in the DAO, like, and around, of course, this vulnerabilities, right? So when the founder or somebody else with a big amount of tokens or a big amount of votes can go and just steal everything. And also it's very important to give control into the people's hands, to give them a choice, to kind of warn them about the possibility of what can go wrong and give them the choice as well. So therefore, how we envision that, it could be, different types of the let's say the decentralized companies or the DAOs, and each one can be different as well, with the different rules. But for the end users, it's very important that we highlight if, for example, if that is a non-profit DAO, so what are the risks are and where they are, so they could choose which one they join, and also watch out for the risks. Yeah, so different ones. And at the same time, we also use the, and that is for the question for the identity, the reputation power engine, where actually the reputation, which is the all the steps that you do on the on a platform, any company that you join, anything you can, this reputation is recorded in your reputation identity and the reputation engine, and people have a choice to actually share those, right? So, and then other people can then select whether you want to join that founder or whether you want to join that DAO, that, sharing or not sharing their identity, their reputation. So, but we essentially, we will need to solve the problem of, of the fraud, of the, let's say, bad behavior using the tools that blockchain can provide us. And that is our take on it, and that's how we do it and solve it.
Okay, Rami, maybe go back. I want to go back to you. So you mentioned that in Wyoming that the DAO was legally recognized. I imagine that means that you can take the DAO to the court, like somebody can sue the DAO. Do you know the Wyoming require the DAO, if you register in Wyoming, has to be, the founder has to be known, or?
So don't quote me on this, but I believe the rule in Wyoming is that in order to register your DAO, you must tell the state of Wyoming who the members of the DAO are. And so those members would be the token holders of the DAO. But what's difficult about this is that you can't actually, in most cases, go out and sue the members of the DAO directly. Just because they are members of the DAO, it doesn't mean you can go out and sue them, because the DAO has been recognized in a way that protects the members from being sued. The members have limited liability. So really you would be going after the DAO itself and any funds in the treasury of the DAO if you were to take action against it in most cases.
I see. Okay. So Daniel, here's the next question. Governance, and DAO, big topic is governance. How does governance work in DAO space compared to, say, in a corporation? We have shareholders meeting, we have board of director. How does governance work in a DAO?
Sure, thank you. So for me, the biggest difference has been that we have transitioned from a scenario where we have a very large group of shareholders that delegate to a board, that delegates to a CEO, and then that CEO starts to expand again, delegates to an executive team, delegates to a bunch of managers, who then delegates to a bunch of people. So we have kind of like this hourglass sort of shape of distribution of power. And in a way that what that creates is this bottleneck in the middle, where there is one person that can really make a lot of decisions, but because it's only one person, they have very limited time, they have a lot of pressure, and so on. And that means that there is a lot of decisions that they don't have the time to make, or it would be too expensive for them to make, and so on, and it doesn't kind of happen. And equally, it means that we have this principal agent problem, where because we're delegating to this person that is in a position of extreme power, but this person is not the same as us, they have a different set of incentives, they can use their position of power to essentially to capture more benefits. And so in corporations, we often encounter CEOs who are earning millions and millions, while the average worker gets very little, and sometimes even the shareholders are not getting such a good deal. Now, this is also an antagonistic model, where it's kind of like the shareholders against the employees, trying to extract as much from the customers and so on. So these different stakeholders are pitted against each other. In DAOs, the idea is more to bring these different stakeholders together at the table, to empower all of them to make decisions. So whether they're customers, whether they're employees or contributors to the DAO in some way, workers, whether they're providing capital, or really in any form that they're engaged with the organization, ideally, right? Like this is something that needs to be done, and is a lot of DAOs are only DAOs in name only. It's a process to get here. But in the ideal world, we're empowering these different people to make decisions, to work together, and for everyone to win. So instead of kind of splitting the pie and trying to get the biggest slice of the pie, what we're trying to do together is grow the pie. And because you're also empowering everyone, you're allowing the best ideas to come from everywhere. So then in practice, that can end up with many different governance models. The most basic of one is direct democracy, which is essentially anyone who's a token holder can make a proposal and the other token holders vote on that proposal. Now, that's a functional model, but it's really basic. And then we can go from that to, we could talk for ages about more advanced models. And that's really the game of governance. But in essence, it's about empowering everyone to participate and work together.
Okay, Daniel, in terms of governance, in the traditional corporate world, some decision is delegated to the executive. In DAO, do they have I imagine not everything need to be voted. If the use of the fund in a DAO, of course, probably need to be voted. Are there any clear separation that say, okay, certain kind of decision will delegate to some member just to do it, just get it done, and some decision must be approved by the DAO, or the member of DAO?
I mean, it's really a design question. if you ask what DAOs are doing all kind of things. And I think most of them are actually terrible ideas, like really, really bad ideas, and probably won't stand the test of time. In my personal opinion, what you're trying to pit against is the idea that you want to have everyone the possibility to contribute, not necessarily in practice contributing all the time. And so yes, you have delegation, but what matters is like the fine print here on how that delegation happens. So if everyone is delegating to a single person, you're going to end up again with that principal agent person, where the incentives of that person might be very different from everyone else, and they just don't have the bandwidth. It's too centralized. They can handle too few things. It's only one human, right? Like they're only human. And so what you actually want is that you can delegate to different people for different decisions. If you think about it, like if you want to go to the cinema and watch a movie, you have certain friends that you ask about movies, but you have different friends that you ask about restaurants because they know about restaurants, or you have different friends that you ask about politics. And also you can change your mind. And also the thing is, whenever you're trying to delegate to someone who you don't really know, you have very little information, and probably you're going to make a bad judgment. Like when we try to elect politicians, they make all of these campaigns, but they systematically turn out to be less good than we thought they were. So for me, a concept that is really important is, or really valuable, that we're only starting to explore in DAOs, is this idea of liquid democracy. That means that I can delegate to anyone I want, but in practice, I can delegate to you or to a friend, essentially to someone I know, I trust, someone who's in my community, who represents my values, and who, if they do something wrong, if they vote the wrong way, I can go and hold them accountable because they are close to me. They're not like far removed in their villa where I have no access. But then this person can delegate in turn to someone else who knows more than them, and so on. And through this chain of delegation, the system can encounter expertise and get a really good signal. But also you can change your vote at any time, hence the name liquid democracy, so that power doesn't get entrenched and these positions of power are not abused. And this is one of the different mechanisms that I think can be extremely valuable to create in DAOs a better future of organizations that is essentially better for the majority of people involved, and not for a few people in positions of power that can extract a lot of resources at the expense of everyone else.
Okay, Elena, on your platform, do you support liquid democracy, liquid delegation of voting? Is that your platform support that kind of a mechanism?
So it's hard to say right now what our platform support is not developed yet. So so we have the kind of like very basic functionality where you can create, GEC and join people to GEC. But really, we're right now in the research phase of the of the rules. Yes, we're researching from the economy perspective, right? So we believe that it has to be again, the economy mechanism embedded into, DAO or DEC, so people will be incentivized to vote. Otherwise, it become unpaid job, and people they kind of avoid voting. They vote once and twice, and then if they need to vote again and again and they kind of get tired, and it just doesn't work. And that's why you see the delegation, this and that. So this is kind of like a symptom of the problem where people are not incentivized, and maybe they should be paid for it, and maybe it should be their job, and maybe they should work full time for this company where they are. And that's why our whole research and the approach of that is the decentralized autonomous company instead of this volunteer organization. But by all means, volunteer organization will exist as well as they exist right now. For example, CryptoChicks is a volunteer organization, and people are showing up every week on a meeting, and they do it because they have it at heart. But I don't believe that all the DAOs that exist right now, all the people are like really, really keen to vote and participate in every vote right now, and which creates that delegation problem.
Do you support that the expert who can be delegated to vote for others, should they get paid?
Absolutely, right? So like if somebody is doing somebody's job, they should be paid for that job, right? So it's either part of the tokens have to be transferred to them or something like that. In this case, people will be more incentivized to be a delegates, or the other people will be, less incentivized to delegate the vote. Something like that, yes.
Okay. Now let's move to voting. So we talk about governance and voting. There's often we hear a term called quadratic voting. Rami, would you mind to explain what is quadratic voting? Like why is good, or why is there any drawback on this kind of method?
Sure. So I think it's worth comparing it to our typical system of voting that people are used to, where every person gets one vote. They vote for what they want to happen, and whichever choice gets the most votes, just counting up the number of votes, is the choice that is selected. And so if you've got friends and you want to order a pizza, you ask everyone what type of pizza they want, and if 3 people say cheese and 2 people say vegetarian, well, you're getting the cheese pizza, right? Quadratic voting comes into play when people can vote with their money. And so if you have a system where $1 is equal to 1 vote, then people with more money will have more ability to sway how the vote is resolved. So in the world of DAOs, votes are typically counted by the number of that DAO's token that you have. So if you have 1 million of a DAO's token, and your friends have just 10 of that token, then you will win every single vote. No matter how many of your friends there are, you have the most money, and so you'll win the vote. So quadratic voting is a voting method that tries to make the system a little bit more fair. And it says, if you have $1, you can have 1 vote. If you have $2, you can have 2 votes. But to get the 3rd vote, you need to have 3 squared. So you need to have $9. If you want to have the 4th vote, you need to have $16, and so on and so on. If you want to have 100 votes, you need to have $10,000. And so this limits the ability for wealthy actors to impact how votes are resolved. It still lets wealthy actors have more vote than someone with less resources, but it tries to make the voting system a little bit more fair to the community of participants working together in a DAO.
Okay, given that some member may be anonymous, how would you prevent people like open 10,000 account and each only have a few tokens, so they can get to game this quadratic voting by creating many account, one party create many account?
This is a good question, and this is a standard question that plagues the quadratic voting system. And it says, well, okay, if I have $10,000 and you're only letting me have 100 votes with that, why don't I just make 10,000 wallets and give each of them $1, and then I actually get 10,000 votes?
Yeah.
And that's gaming the system. That's called a Sybil attack. And it's one of these documented problems with how quadratic voting works. And the solution to it is something called proof of person. And it says, let's find a way to prove that each account, each wallet address is tied to an actual human. And there are ways of doing that ties your identity to the blockchain. Some people like that, some people don't like that. But right now, I think that is, I'd be curious if anyone else has another idea, but to my knowledge, that's one of the best ways to get around this Sybil attack. It looks like, Elena, you have another idea.
Yeah, staking. So like in order to create an account, you do the staking. Yeah, you stake some, some significant amount of money. And also your account is tied to the reputation as well. So right, so you can see the reputation on account and you can see the stake as well. So in this case, person has to have, well, lots of money in order to not only the money will allow him to, for example, create many accounts, but he has to stake way more than like $1 or something like that they have. And as well, the reputation will be seen too. Like if this account only participate in that one and there's nothing else, then you can see already too. So this is something that we also thought about, and this is the problem that we're solving too.
Okay, so
well, that's the beauty of DAOs. You can keep innovating, and it's up to the community to solve these problems.
Exactly. Yes. So you just show it to people. You just present it to them like in the open and kind of like auditable, the information that is very open and auditable, and then they decide, right? So what is actually, if this is the same person, or this is like a fake person, or this is the fake account. So something like that can be easily identifiable.
So it sounds like a proof of humanity is a very good app tool for DAO. So in terms of governance, Daniel, besides identity, there's any you see any tool that can be helpful for DAO to manage effectively? Like what have you seen in this space that people use to help the management, the organization, the coordination better in the DAO space?
Yeah, sure. So I would distinguish two broad categories. One is we're talking about voting, which is essentially confirming a decision. Is all the process has already kind of happened, and we just need to approve it. And I'll speak about a couple of ideas here. But there is also the other side of everything that needs to happen before or after, like the execution side, and also how do people agree and discuss and so on. And the process before the decision is approved is still very much a virgin territory. There isn't much that's happening now. There is a few smaller organizations who are starting to create some tools for the community to align and to do this well, and also to prevent attacks in this space. But it's very, very new, and essentially that's one of the reasons for this new organization that we're starting, is to help do a lot of research and prototyping and so on, and tackle that space. On the voting space, on top of the identity and reputation sort of things, there is also the time factor that can be leveraged. So there is one tool that forces you, that's called conviction voting, and it forces you, essentially you put your tokens for something, and over time they accrue more voting power. So the longer that you keep on voting for the same thing, the more voting power you have. And so that means that essentially in practice, you kind of need to vote for things for some time. And it makes it a lot less likely that someone can come and really quickly make an attack, because they wouldn't have as much voting power as the others who have been there for a while. It also has the advantage of preventing the tyranny of the majority. So a little bit what Ramin was saying, in that if 3 people vote for something and 2 others wanted a different thing, the 2 lose, and that's it, and they always lose. So in this situation, they can, over time, if there is something they really believe, warn on that. And there is another twist on that actually moves forward, that I prefer, that would be kind of building a little bit on what Elena was saying about staking, that I actually believe is a fantastic approach, is that you could stake something and lock those tokens for longer. So let's say if I say, I'm really convinced this is a fantastic idea, so it's so good that if we win, if the decision I'm supporting wins, I'm going to lock my tokens for the next 3 months. And so that means I really believe in it a lot more than someone who says, well, I'm not going to lock them at all, or I'm going to lock them for 2 months. So actually, if the attacker wants to just buy a bunch of tokens, well, they will have to lock them for a very long time. And if what they're doing is bad for the network and everyone else is going to leave, well, they're going to lose all their money. So they're not going to lock them. So it kind of can prevent that a little bit. And then finally, the other thing is in the execution side, when we're talking about finances, this is mostly automated, like the tokens just get transferred. But one thing that can happen is a delay in the execution, which what then is called a rage quit period, which is essentially before the decision is executed, people can choose to leave, they can choose to take their assets and leave. And this is really fantastic. It exists in a couple of different networks. Primitives like this I really support it. It really provides a lot of autonomy and empowerment, so that there is no capture of the DAO by some individual who has bad intentions. People can take their assets and go and start another one again. And then finally, you can have also arbitration protocols, that is essentially ways to, according of a constitution of a document to the DAO, use a decentralized sort of court system that can stop proposals that go against those agreements. So that's also kind of like a little bit on the side of the execution, another thing that can be used to prevent and improve the governance in general, but it needs to be done well. Otherwise, if you create really bad agreements, those can be used to, you know, to stop good proposals and so on. Okay, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, that's all the tools we need to make a DAO function more effectively. I saw some company even provide a legal tax service for DAO that you can just make the job easier. So we definitely see the community is growing and more tool available. Now move on to Ramin. Here's a question. You've given your experience in VC in the space and also a lawyer. Does any project, any community need to be DAO, or there's a certain type of a situation that a DAO is more suitable? You know, if you are advisor to a community, say, should we become a DAO or become a corporation, LLC? Like, what would you advise them? Like,
yeah, I think that's a really good question. And really, if you zoom out a little bit, you can think of the DAO as a way to organize human activity. So right now we have a lot of different ways of doing that. We have the corporation, we have the partnership, we have the LLC, we have a nonprofit, charitable organizations. All of these are ways that people can group up together and just get something done, work towards a common mission. And what the DAO does is it really adds one more option to that set of choices. And what I've seen is the DAO is really, really good at some things, and we still need to work on other things, other parts of the DAO. So things that the DAO is really good at is having a community that owns a vault of money, a vault of resources, a vault of assets. You can really efficiently share assets among a community. You can really efficiently let that community control what looks and feels like a bank account in a very fair way. And you can almost think about it as a group chat with a bank account. And that is a very broad stroke, but that's a nice way of thinking about it. DAOs are really good because they're programmatic. So if you need to do anything, if your mission involves tracking the activity of things programmatically, you want to do financial functions, you want to do investing or trading or insurance. These are great financial functions that would benefit from the ability to have programmatic access to the markets. Places where the DAO doesn't work so well right now, and I think these are being worked on and these inefficiencies are going away, is governance. Governance is difficult, and in a world where we're taking governance from a world where people at the top have more authority than people at the bottom, to a world where authority is dispersed and granted and vested with many, many people, having to vote on many different things. If you're having a vote on every element of the business, are we going to go in this direction or that direction? We're going to have a vote before every product change occurs. That could slow down an organization if you're a very, very product-driven organization that needs to react quickly to what customers want. That might be difficult. And so I think it's not so much any one sector or another, but whether you can get by with the inefficiencies of DAOs right now in order to access their extreme efficiencies.
Two other panelists, Elena and Daniel, do you have anything to add in terms of what kind of a mission, what kind of a project is more suitable to have a DAO rather than a private enterprise?
Well, since like we work on the DACs, decentralized autonomous company, we would like to, of course, kind of the eventually have the templates for each of them. What is it nowadays is suitable for? So like we see that these are the communities or the blockchain companies that turning DAOs so they could, let's say, get the regulators off their back and show that they are, yes, so it's not the one person that is making the decisions, but the whole the community. So kind of like offloading responsibility to a community of people instead of the founder. So that is the model that actually works so far. Right. So, and this probably, I think that's the most popular one. Also, let's say that companies that are like you see infrastructure, for example, that are very popular, like Avi, Uniswap. So they are integrating, and everybody wants them to integrate them into their platforms or something like that. They also offloading this responsibility to their community to vote on these decisions. So it's kind of say like, oh yeah, this is not I'm that making decisions. So go to our community and they going to vote. So it's kind of like offloading responsibility. That's what I see is happening right now, which is, I cannot say that it's a really good thing, but this is something that works nowadays. Eventually, of course, I would like to see it as a good thing, and I'm personally turning it in a good thing.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Daniel, anything to add?
I mean, I would add that it's important to understand that DAOs are very much in the early stage. Like sometimes I'm kind of like internet in the 70s with these punch cards and rusty machines, and like it's right now you don't necessarily need to be a developer, but if you don't have you're not a developer, or you don't have a developer in your team, you're going to struggle. But that is changing very, very rapidly. Like the functionality, the UX, the tools for users who are not developers. Like myself, I'm not a developer, and now I'm able to work in this space and to create DAOs and so on. A year and a half ago, that was not even possible. It doesn't matter how much I know about the theory and so on. Like it was just not possible to do it without writing code. And that's now like really on the other way. But one also needs to understand that because of that, there is a lot of things that are still challenging. So really DAOs are fantastic for someone who is happy being a little bit of a leader of the pack, an early pioneer. And there is a lot of opportunities to be tackled because of that, because it's so early, like it's all there for the taking. But it's going to be a little bit difficult. So if you want to have like an easy life, really chill, and just do a small thing where you do it completely your way and you don't care about what other people are thinking, and it's just going to be small, and you want to do it easy, a DAO is not for you. But if you are interested in kind of like trying to do something innovative, edgy, that might be difficult, but very rewarding, then I think it's a really fantastic route.
Great.
Another thing is crowdfunding, probably. That's probably the one that is what we know, also one of the most common ones and most successful DAOs is the crowdfunding ones. When the people come with one goal to raise money for something, for some big, something big, and that's the ones that probably that are the most successful.
Yeah, I did saw, a lot of single purpose DAO, like they have well-defined mission objective. But I also saw some more of a general purpose DAO. Their mission much more broad. So we'll see what whether the general purpose DAO can function well enough, given they have much more broad mandate. Time will tell. Okay, we are 50 minutes after we start. I think it will be a good time to open up the channel, allow the audience ask question directly to the panelists. So if you have question, can you just use the reaction, the emoji that raise your hand, use the emoji, so we can select you to unmute you to ask the question directly. I'd rather you ask the speaker directly. Anyone?
I can see the question in the chat right now about where to look for DAOs. So, and maybe I can share the screen. I just have very nice infographics for the existing DAOs from one of the person on Twitter. If you'd like, I can do that.
Yes,
so that's listing all the DAOs. And okay, thank you. All right, so these are the infographics. So right now, just see all the names So there are all, operating system, investment DAOs, collector protocol, service, social DAO, media DAOs. So these are the, it's probably just maybe take a picture, have a name. So that is the presentation that our Pavel Snelnikov from Meetup created for Eat Denver. So he's presenting tomorrow.
Oh,
So you
great.
can go to Eat Denver live stream. So that's like this section is actually future of DAOs.
Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly like this event.
That's great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from audience? Any other question?
I actually had a quick question, Victor. It's Krista.
Oh, Krista, go ahead. Of course.
I mean, I guess probably a bunch of people have seen the news of what's happened in Canada in the last few hours. But I'm curious. I think one of you touched on at the beginning of the discussion about, you know, whether governments could function as DAOs. I'm just curious whether the panelists have any thoughts on that, given, you know, democracy is, as many of us say, the best system that we have, but maybe not optimal. Is there anything in the DAO structure that could fix that?
Any of the panelists like answer? Daniel?
I'm happy to strive with a few comments, knowing that it's an extremely complex question. One issue that, or one of the biggest issues in governments is capture by political interest or private interest that are trying to coerce the government or manipulate the government to do something differently. The one property that DAOs that can really help with these relates to both the automatic execution, but also the transparency that the execution can have. So when you can see exactly where the flow of funds is going, where it's being transferred to, at what point, and you can have traceability of which proposals that came through, that can help quite a bit. That being said, you can still bribe people, manipulate, even do, how do you call it? Anyway, essentially manipulate the population at large, populism, sorry, do populist campaigns and so on to manipulate the opinion of the people and get them to vote for something that might not necessarily be in their best interest. So DAOs by themselves don't necessarily solve that, but using communication technology, different applications of blockchain technology, of identity and so on, there's many different things that we can do to help improve these, but it's really not an easy problem. It's more a problem that's going to take us probably a few decades, if not longer, to address, even though we can start to make some improvements now.
Okay, thank you. Ramin, there's a question in the chat, is for you. Based on your experience, have you seen the legal world adapt to the world of DAO or Web3 in general?
That's a great question. The legal world is notoriously slow to change. I think there's two ways of looking at this. One are we finding that we're creating law firms that are using the DAO structure, and the other is, are the regulators and legislators and people who deal with the law trying to figure out how we apply the law to the DAO world. The first question is easier. There is one DAO, to my knowledge, that is organized to look a little bit like a collective of lawyers that will answer your legal questions. The second question, which is how is the legal world responding to the world of DAOs, is a little trickier. I mentioned before that the state of Wyoming has introduced legislation to let DAOs legally register as an entity in Wyoming, and we say, oh, you've registered as an entity and you are an LLC, or you look just like an LLC, which is helpful, but only if you want to register in Wyoming, which many organizations might not want to do. The world of how do we apply jurisprudence to the world of DAOs is very much not concrete at all right now. The best we can do is go back to first principles and use the very basic tenets of the law to try and say, how should we look at people interacting with DAOs? How should we govern them, and how should the law poke its head in there. But we have very little legislation. We have very little judges and courtrooms working with DAOs, and legislators and regulators are just not really there yet. So it's very early days, but I think we're going to see a lot more in 2022. Like Victor says, this might be the year of the DAO.
Great, thank you, Rami. Next question: example. What are the example of DAO's success story? I think this one perhaps I can give a try. So I went to a website called DeepDAO, which they track all the DAO or most of the DAO, and the top 3 DAO in terms of the size of a treasury is number 1 is Uniswap, and the second one is BitDAO, and third one is Lido Finance. They are the top 3. Would you, question for our panel, would you call them these 3 a good example of a successful DAO? Or do you have any better example? Say, the size of treasury is not really indication of a success, but there's some other DAO I think I really like.
Yeah, I have one that I like that is probably that is not top of the 3 in terms of the treasury. Treasury is just one KPI that can be there, right? So yeah, amount of money is probably does not indicate the success. Yeah, so Spork DAO, for example, and the Spork DAO is the collective that organizes Denver, the Eat Denver event. So yes, so and Eat Denver event, I can tell you because I'm looking at the Eat events around the world, and the Eat Denver so far is the largest, is the most popular one. So yes, so right now it is going already. So this year it's 2 weeks long, and I'm going there on Wednesday. And so that DAO that organizes this event is basically that these are the members of this DAO. They are also event organizers, and like 100, the most active of them are actually physically participate in the operation of this event. So this event, this year it's 15,000 people that attracts. And remember that they were sold out on the sponsorships even before they opened up the sponsorships, and they had over 100 sponsors on the waiting list, and still have over 100 sponsors on the waiting list. So this is like it's a kind of very major success that this DAO does. Like the work that they do, that behind the scenes that they do, is actually paying off. So event becoming so popular that sponsors beg to take their money, and they actually can't, right? So the amount of capital does not matter in that case, and they also raised money to invest into the projects. So the projects that are built on Eat Denver, so the Spork DAO members also raised money and raised capital to invest into this project. So of course the millions and millions of dollars are going towards the the hackathon projects that are being built. So this is one of the success stories that I participate in. Okay,
so the DAO is Ether Denver itself is a DAO.
Eat Denver, yeah, Eat Denver is a DAO. Yes.
Okay, great. Is Ether global?
It's global. It's a different organization. It's global is supported by Ethereum Foundation. So this is not a DAO. This is like rather probably group of people that are executing on behalf of Ethereum Foundation. And Eat Denver, for example, is not falling on the Eat Global. Eat Global has different events.
I see. Okay. So you just answered one of the questions from Melissa. She asked, what's your favorite DAO? So I imagine that you just answered that question. Maybe we'll move to Daniel and Ramin. What's your favorite DAO? Do you have a favorite DAO? Daniel?
Let me mention perhaps 2 or 3. So one of my favorites was SourceCred, and actually it's had a lot of issues since, but it was a really fantastic organization building and conceptually a really amazing project. Then very decentralized, lots of people really empowered. And a DAO I very much like as well is OneHive, which is a very relatively small DAO. They're not particularly wealthy and so on, but they started without raising capital, just people working together, coordinating, giving tokens to each other that had no value. And now actually those tokens are worth a significant amount, just because they have managed to create a series of different products by coordinating as well in a very decentralized manner. So without having like a single leader at the top that dictates to people, is more a very bottom-up community working together. And then two others that I quite like that are very geeky governance-wise is the Common Stack and Token Engineering Commons.
Okay, thank you. There's a follow-up question that Daniel for you from the audience. Daniel, you mentioned that DAO creation tool which don't require software development knowledge. Could you please name a couple of them, that DAO creation tool that you?
Yeah, so I mean, I come across a few. I don't quite remember the names. There are sometimes slightly newer ones who are still small. I know that now DAO, or they have, it's kind of like a no-code user interface for Moloch DAOs who have done significant progress in this direction. The language and so on is still a little bit technical, but I know you can create it no code.
Okay, thank you. Ramin, do you have a favorite DAO?
Gosh, I think there's such cool things going on being built in DAOs. I'm gonna point to Gitcoin. I think Gitcoin is an excellent DAO. What they do is they fund developers who contribute to open source tools that are used across the internet. Open source tools are used in so many projects and they need a lot of work. It's a lot of work to develop them, to maintain them, to make sure they still work in the future. And I think Gitcoin is doing excellent work to build a community of developers who want to contribute to these projects and get paid for their work. So I think they're doing something excellent.
Okay. I just recently read a DAO, which I find fascinating. It's called Cabin. Apparently, a group of people bought a cabin and they invite friends to use as a co-working space, and then they turn into a DAO and they raise some money and bought more cabin, and now it's growing. So that's also interesting concept. Basically, it's a co-working space, but it's a DAO. So I find that quite interesting. Okay, we have another question. Can you delegate vote to expert? I think we discussed this. You can if the experts also in the system, and probably they can get paid for. You have to pay them to do the work for you. Next.
Victor, you've got two people actually in the chat who've raised their hands as well. Amit and Jan.
Okay. So maybe we'll move the question to the people who raise hand. Okay. The first one, Amit. Yeah, would you like to ask the question, please?
Yes, I think the nature of my Amit here. The nature of my question changed a bit, I guess, with some of the inputs that Elena gave, and quite rightly so, that the amount of capital may not be just the only KPI. What I was actually originally thinking about is, Victor, you said around $8 billion has got invested in all of the DAOs. Now, considering that, what I was first trying to understand is that from the screenshot of the different types of DAOs that Elena shared, do we know which class of DAOs are really picking the interest of investors? Do we have an idea on that? That was my first part. The second thing was, from the panelists, I was, quite curious to know, because Daniel had a good point. Now, a lot of these things, it's very true. We are in the 80s or the 70s of the internet for as far as DAOs are concerned. So it'll take time. But do we have few sectors, few areas where we are expecting, things to really, take good shape, where DAOs have a great have a chance of succeeding? And because if things are like that, then truly we may have 2022 as the year of the DAO. Thank you.
Thank you. Elena, would you like to take this question to start?
Really, I don't know. Rather than investment DAOs that are raising investor probably interest. So Metacartel is the one that I know. So this is the one that probably I cannot say most successful, but at least because I know it and I heard about it. So that's probably the one that is I can point out that one. Also, I know that, yes, because I know SporkDAO, investors are going for it, and SporkDAO didn't have any problem of raising money from the investors to invest into the projects. Gitcoins actually is invested by, I think, Consensus. Consensus invested into Gitcoin, and that's Gitcoin is the Consensus product. Yeah, so it's again, it depends. Yes, the short answer to the question, yes, investors are interested if there is an investor interest in there. So the DAOs that are investing in other projects, so these are probably the most popular among investors. Otherwise, what else could be popular among investors?
I think to answer Amin's question, maybe the size of the treasury is an indication of investors' interest, right? If people willing to put the money into the DAO in the treasury, then maybe that's an indication of the interest. Most recently, the constitutional DAO, that they will raise quite a bit of money in a very short period of time, even though they didn't win the bid to buy the copy of Constitution, but it was amazing how short period of time they're able to rally the community to raise the money. Okay, we have another person, Yan, raise question. Would you like to go ahead, ask your question, please?
Sure, thank you everyone for your time tonight. My question is really related to what we just discussed. In terms of success, what will be your recommendation in terms of blockchain to create your DAO as of today?
Okay, Daniel, would you like to answer the question?
So, yeah, sorry, I actually missed the question. Could you repeat it?
Yeah.
So the question is, on which blockchain would you recommend to create your DAO?
I mean, for me, it kind of depends what type of DAO it is. Like, what are you trying to do with it? For a lot of the most applications and so on, the biggest treasuries are in Ethereum. But then there is loads of other ecosystems that are proliferating a lot. Layer 2s are really fantastic in that they can combine the security of Ethereum with lower gas prices, more scalability, and so on. But it really depends what you're doing. If you're a DAO that is servicing other DAOs, then the question is, what type of other DAOs are you servicing? It's essentially like a market segmentation. Like, you can take projects that have been successful in Ethereum and create something that serves somewhat a similar purpose, but in one of the other chains where those projects are still not present. And if you're just trying to create a DAO that has nothing to do with the blockchain, that is like, for example, an event organizer DAO, ultimately they could be in any chain. At that point, like, yeah, you can use either one of the layer 2s, or otherwise perhaps Polygon or Gnosis chain have relatively low gas prices while having relatively good security. But that's also starting to become a less important question. Like, there is a little bit more interoperability, and what really matters is more, where can you find a really good stack of tools that really allow you to set up an effective DAO?
Great. Ramin, do you have anything to add on this question? Like, which blockchain have you seen the most DAO?
I think I would echo what Daniel says. I agree with that wholeheartedly. That today we're seeing some of the most popular DAOs being built on Ethereum. I think that you go down the list, and probably 10 out of the top 10 DAOs by Treasury are built on Ethereum. Don't quote me on that. But I think Daniel's point of, you need to build where the tools are. is really important. I think you need to build where the people are as well. And some blockchains you can see have adoption that is growing at a faster pace than others. I think you can start to see projects that are being built on other blockchains, and I would go to where the people are, but also to where the tools are if you're very tool dependent.
Okay. Did that answer your question, or Elena, you have anything to add to this question?
Yes, so basically you have to follow unless you're a developer and you're going to be building the DAO from scratch and writing the code for it, doesn't matter which blockchain you are on, right? So you need to follow the tools exactly. So that's what Ramin says, and I agree with Daniel. Layer choose is probably the ones that the way to go. And I also have a question from Ray Rosa. So if I can share the deck, unfortunately, this is not my deck. I kind of stole it from my team member. And yes, so because he will be presenting tomorrow, I dropped the link where he will be presented around 12 p.m. Eastern time. Tomorrow he will be presenting at twitch.tv/Ethereum Denver. So you can watch his presentation there. And yeah, so unfortunately cannot share it.
Thank you. Amir has a follow-up question. Amir, would you like to ask our panelists directly?
Oh, thank you, Victor. It was just the second one that I had was trying to say that to the panelists, were having experience of different kinds of DAOs that are the projects that are going on. What kind of DAOs do you believe have the greatest chance of success in the near term? I'm asking this in context to what Daniel was saying. It's right that we are in the very early stages of DAOs, which have very broad objectives or very vast objectives. But what kind of specific DAOs do you see succeeding in the short term?
I'm happy to take something here. Just to frame the question is a little bit like you ask us, what type of companies do you see succeeding in the early stages? And I would have to ask, well, in which geography? Like it's really super broad. Like what the DAOs are doing is replacing the traditional corporation, the off-chain corporation. So you'll have all kind of DAOs across all kind of industries that are succeeding. Some places that I see heating up that are super interesting are related to land and real estate, but particularly related to everything that is eco, sustainability, regenerative. So regenerative finance, carbon credits, this whole sort of space of like the combination of ethics, climate change, DAOs, technology solutions, land and novel uses of land seems to me something that has a lot of potential for this year to become really, really big.
Thank you.
Okay, now we are 15 minutes after 7. Now we have spent over an hour talking. I know we can really keep talking. This is a very exciting topic. But perhaps before closing, maybe if I'm going to ask each of the speaker, what kind of prediction you want to share with the community this year? Like, there's anything you're pretty sure that is going to happen this year? Can you share just 1 or 2 things you're willing to predict? Alina, would you like to start?
Ooh, I'm so bad with the future prediction, and I will not believe if you predict that. So yes, but I would like to probably express what I want. I want to see people probably understanding and valuing decentralization more, and that's why we're here. That's why we're in the blockchain, and sometimes we forget about it, and we kind of sacrifice everything for the speed and price and money. But really what is the power of our industry right now is the decentralization. So you know, I predict that everyone will understand that in this year. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ramin, would you like to share any prediction with the community?
I think that DAOs are really going to help enable the future of work even more than what we're seeing right now. So we've seen the future of work change from full-time employment to contract work to gig work. I think that DAOs are going to be a hub for workers to organize in the future. And I think we're going to see work be done through DAOs more and more, and it to become more and more common for people to have their jobs through a DAO.
Yeah, I saw somebody wrote a blog post, describe how he took DAO, work for DAO full time. Like, that's quite interesting. I forget the name, the person, but if you Google, it's a blog post, how I work for DAO full time. So if you're interested, you can just find out more. Okay, now we'll move on to Daniel. Any prediction you would like to share?
Yeah, sure. A couple of them quickly. One is as DAOs become more popular, I really imagine that we're going to have a lot more people who come with like a Web 2 mentality coming into Web 3 and pretending to do DAOs, but they're actually not going to be doing DAOs. And probably the word DAO is going to become a little bit bastardized, and we might forget about decentralization. Like Elena, I think and Ramin and Victor, I think we're all here very much fighting for the same team, like fighting for decentralization, and that's kind of coming to my second prediction, is that even though that is going to be challenging and really kind of like, I mean, it's not a small thing, but for me, really, the future of humanity kind of depends on doing this properly. But the other prediction I would say is that the projects that thrive, at least within the DAO space, are gonna be those that realize the power of collaboration, that don't try to do everything themselves, but actually realize that there is a whole ecosystem out there, and by working together with the ecosystem, by giving to the ecosystem, by giving to the community, by empowering people, like essentially instead of trying to take everything and do everything oneself and accumulate as much, those that give the most, that collaborate the most, are going to be those that end up creating the most value for themselves and for everyone involved. And so I would bet that is going to become increasingly clear as there is more projects that try to take a monolithic approach and do everything themselves, and they're going to struggle like others have struggled in the past. So the prediction is that more people are going to learn that lesson this year the hard way.
Thank you, Daniel. Appreciate share your insight, and thank you, Rami and Elena, for coming on the panel. And we spent over an hour talking about this exciting project, and there's so many things happening, and as you mentioned, that more and more people working part-time or full-time for DAOs. I'm pretty sure that next year we'll even see more people, more tools available, build more better governance, better token economics to make a DAO more effective. Okay, so that's the end of our panel discussion. I will pass back to our host. Bitcoin Bay is Krista still here?
I am, yeah. Thank you so much, all of the panelists, for joining. It's been really great, really fascinating. And I feel like we could do 5 hours on this topic. Just so everybody knows, we've got next week's meetup. I just put it in the chat. It's going to be in person at Bitcoin Base. We'll be sending, I think the details are up on Meetup already, but we'll be sending a reminder out to everyone tomorrow who's in Toronto and would like to see us in person. Thank you, Victor, so much for hosting. You've been an absolute legend. And Leo, did you want to wrap up with any thoughts or any kind of housekeeping for everyone?
Basically, we thank everybody for coming. Great job, Victor, as always. And the panelists, great job. We thank everybody for doing that.
God bless.
God bless, as my daughter says. And hope I've learned a lot, and maybe I'll create a Canada DAO to help take care of all of our issues, who knows. But again, everyone, thank you very much. If you have any questions, you can shoot us an email at info@bitcoinbay.ca. And actually, before all the panelists go, how can everybody follow you or know more about you? If you can share that in the chat, or just unmute yourself and do that. And Victor as well. I know Victor runs, he's part of the founders of Toronto DeFi, so follow him and learn more about DeFi as well. So we'll start off with Victor. Share your socials so people can follow you as well.
Thank you. Maybe I'll use this opportunity to announce our next DeFi Toronto meetup, we have a 4 speaker come on Thursday. The theme is NFT. One of the speaker is Krista Kim. If you Google her, you will know that she is the first one built a virtual house and sold off for $500,000. And now she's partnered with luxury brand creating all kind of NFT. So if you're interested to learn more about that, please join us on Thursday, 7 p.m. And okay, I will let other panelists to mention their following.
Go ahead, Elena.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having us, and happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, thank you. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Hopefully you bought your wife and husband's chocolates and flowers and all that good stuff. So thank you. So how can people follow you, Elena? On
I just dropped in the chat, so Elena CryptoChick, that's my Twitter. So
Okay,
follow me
cool.
on Twitter, please.
Okay, perfect. Daniel?
Yeah, same here. I just dropped it on the chat, but I'm at _Daniel_Ospina on Twitter. And feel free to reach out. You can send me messages. I'll be happy to continue the conversation. Great meeting you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Perfect. Last but not least, Ramin, still there?
Great to be here with you all. I'm at Ramin Wright on Twitter, and you can find me on LinkedIn too.
Perfect. Again, from the deepest heart of the Bitcoin Bay team, we thank everybody for showing up, for coming, and also we thank the panelists and the moderator. Again, I learned a lot from every one of you guys. All right, everyone. Thank you guys for coming. Again, bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye.